Hi, and welcome to another Travel Geek podcast. Today I'm talking with Daniel Baxter, owner-operator of Shopoffgrid.com, way out in Vista, California. Say hi, Daniel.
Hey, how's it going?
If you're thinking, what's solar got to do with travel? Well, this is not your normal travel segment that we do here on the Travel Geek. I have yet to unveil the project that I'm working on. I mean, I've announced it to my Facebook friends and a couple other places. Facebook.com/The Travel Geek. You can find a couple updates. But I'm building a tiny house on wheels. And these buses, you know, Daniel, I'm sure you've heard of this. They all have names, and I've named mine Linus the Land Yacht, which
all
is
right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's 100%.
Why Linus?
Linus? Well, you
a Charlie Brown fan?
that's exactly where it came from. I saw the old cartoon had been remade into a movie recently, and I was like, that was always my favorite character. You know, it wasn't Charlie. It wasn't.
If I had a van, it would be called Pigpen.
Pigpen. Well, my bus, as you know, is 100% off-grid, and that is where Daniel comes in. Daniel actually sponsored some of the solar power that went into the bus. Very generous, Daniel, by the way. Thanks again for that.
Not a problem.
So, Daniel, talk a little bit about yourself. How did you get into the solar slinging business? And, we'll tie all that into the travel, the mobile applications from there.
Well, a little over 9 years ago, I actually started a company with my brother. But we built up an online solar business, and here at the beginning of this year, I was actually bought out of that company and wanted to focus really on Offgrid, the other company, the one that my brother and I had started, had a much broader catalog and covered the entire solar gamut. The intent of Shop Offgrid was to really drill down on off-grid solar. So I took my earnings from the buyout and invested it in starting a new company and starting Shop Offgrid. The mission of Shop Offgrid is to provide customers with a really personalized experience when getting into the off-grid experience, and being able to provide materials at a very competitive cost. And any hand-holding and consultation that a customer needs, we're here to provide. So it's more of, I would consider us more of a boutique. We're never looking to get huge. We want to stay small and really, kind of sit into this position we're in the market where, we're, like I said, personalized service, great prices, and delivery times are as short as we can keep them.
Oh my God. I could totally vouch for that. I've had the best experience with you from the get-go. And I think this podcast is actually a product of that. I mean, you're very personable. First of all, I mean, I was halfway through my order, I think, when you reached out and said, "Hey, I just want to make sure I saw that you hadn't completed the order. Let me know if I can help you with anything, blah, blah, blah." And it was just like off to the races from there. Probably I was actually a little bit skeptical. I was like, is this for real? Like, what's going on here? Because you don't get that anymore. You know what I mean? You don't get that kind of personal experience. Maybe it's better not in California, but out here on the East Coast, people just, they're in it to win it and step on everybody else. But very different experience with that. So very, very easy to talk to. Obviously willing to do cool things like this, and kind of push the movement forward. And what's the difference? I think you said you kind of grew up in the Midwest or the Southwest. What's the difference in the mindset of solar power off-grid stuff out in California versus other places, do you think?
I think that it's pretty, as far as the mindset, I think that if you're wanting to go off grid, I think that a majority of the people have the same thought, and a lot of it is they want to be energy independent. They don't want to pay they don't want to pay big electric. And I mean, you can get really granular with it, and there may be some people may be prepping. Other people, again, may just want to be energy independent. So there's different subsets of the ideology, but I think from a macro view, people just want to get off the grid, and control what they're paying for power, whether it's tiny home or in a van, similar to your project. So there's different, and then we do have, you use off-grid. I mean, you can use off-grid for tiny homes and RVs, but there's also lots of applications, lots of field applications when you're charging batteries that are powering field equipment, or you just want to set up a battery charging station. There's other applications other than just powering, which I'm sure people know, than just powering your home, your tiny home, or an RV.
Right. Yeah. And recently we were talking, what was it, like a couple days ago, we were talking about how your aspirations were to grab some land somewhere and throw a cabin up. I think you mentioned Ted Kaczynski, but I'm positive that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and plug that docuseries, that docudrama on man, I forget the channel. I think it's that's not important, but yeah, there's this. Obviously, I don't agree with Ted Kaczynski's behavior when it comes to mailing bombs to people. That was awful.
Yeah.
But I was envious of his living arrangement. It was out in the, he built a cabin out in the woods. Maybe the no running water and no lights was a little past my, what I'd be comfortable with. But it was certainly, getting off grid and living out. Being independent, being energy independent is certainly a goal of mine, and maybe one of these days I'll have that. Live out in the woods, man.
Yeah,
and just live off the land.
One of the things that I thought was interesting, and by the way, I think that you said the other day that was on the Discovery Channel, and not, and I went and found it. I think it's called Manhunt.
Yes.
The series is called Manhunt.
Either Discovery Channel or I think it is Discovery Channel. Discovery or any.
Yeah, he was an interesting character. Worked out in Berkeley. He was like a math super whiz, and like while he was there, got caught up in this whole academics are bullshit. He like damned the system and started saying everything.
Well, I pulled some like Clockwork. According to the docuseries, there's like some Clockwork Orange shit going on with them. And, they ran some experiments, and it was really where they're at in it with the series right now is more about his life. In the beginning, it was. Focused on the detectives that were trying to track him down or tracking him down, and then this past episode was focused on Kaczynski himself, and he went through some. Again, it doesn't justify what he how he vented.
Yeah, of course. But, well, that's obviously mental illness. I mean, that's the wrong kind of living in a cabin. We can regress back on topic in a second, but I think maybe you're just an enabler with the solar power stuff, aren't you?
Oh shit!
Allowing you to live in a cabin since 1957. So, but actually, it's interesting. This particular podcast, I was hoping to do in my bus. You and I, we've been trying to make this happen for quite some time now, right? And I think, part of that is because I was actually building it, and we wanted to, I wanted to talk about the build, specifically, putting the panels on. There's a lot of curiosity online about like how to do it, because it's a little bit of a scary process. I mean, as you and I know, it's easy. But you and I have experience in either electronics or directly with solar, and so it's not quite as intimidating. But I was hoping to get this podcast done. It would be the first podcast from inside Linus. Maybe I shouldn't say it like that. And
what kind of show is this?
Sadly, I'm not, though. It's not because the solar isn't working, though. It's actually working. It was because I hadn't got my hotspot connected yet. But it would have been very cool, though, right? I mean, like, it would have been a little bit of irony that I'm powering the station that is recording the podcast with the person who helped sponsor the power in the first place.
Yeah, that could have been.
But anyway, as far as being an intimidating process, I mean, talk about how easy it is. A lot of people. Yeah, well, one thing I'm glad.
We have at Shopoffgrid and on the website we have a selection of kits. There's when it comes to the tiny homes, and these kits too can be used not just on a tiny home, but if you wanted to put it on a shed or just a smaller house that's not consuming a lot of energy. They're good for recreational vehicles. So you don't have to. They're not applicable just solely to the for a tiny home. But right. we do have kits online that we're selling, and the kitted approach does simplify the process. And because you do receive all the necessary components for the installation. Now, I wouldn't advise anyone that doesn't have any background in electrical or contracting to try to take on an installation themselves. But the process is, and I think maybe you can attest to this, Kyle, that the process is pretty intuitive, just as far as how things come together. And we can supply wiring diagrams and any sort of phone support that you need that we can help with. We're certainly obviously here to provide. So my thought on that is, if you're handy, you understand electrical, have a fundamental understanding of electrical, and you have you're able to get up on a roof or on top of your toy hauler or RV. I think that taking on an installation is totally feasible.
Yeah, totally doable. There's an idea, a theory behind current flow that is the same no matter what system you use, no matter where you go, but you have to have that sort of that background or experience in working with it to apply it to this. It's really, really simple though. Once you've got a little bit of knowledge about how to do that stuff, I mean, it comes.
And there's lots of help out there. And I think that you're probably contributing to this just with when you publish your video on the build. There's lots of video out there that can help someone that is interested in installing. There's lots of YouTube videos that are very helpful out there. Unfortunately, I have a couple YouTube videos that talk about some different wiring techniques, but I don't have anything on installation. But there is lots of information out there, and hopefully, one of these days I'll get a video up that's kind of a comprehensive look at how to install a tiny home off-grid kit. And I do have not only off-grid kits, but there are the grid tie kit, an in-phase grid tie kit, a microinverter grid tie kit. So
yeah, and you actually, I can't recall if you invented one or you actually created a new type of direct charging unit, because
it was not. Yeah, it was not my. I didn't invent it, but I do have a distributor. It's like that did, and it's a really neat little setup. It has a proprietary stand, very innovative stand that folds out. It's got a built-in charge controller. A lot of value adds that people don't realize that you actually need until you sit down and like, I want to set up a charging station. Well, you're going to need a charge controller. It's good to have a fuse. It's good to have a mounting structure to put the panel on. And with this particular, it's a portable charging kit that we do have on the listed in the store. With this particular kit, that's all built into it. So yeah. It's plug and play, and it's really neat. It's going to give you a good charge on your batteries. It just it depends on how much of a charge you really need. And a lot of times when we're dealing with battery charging, that comes down to how much you're pulling out of your batteries, and that can be a very, very difficult conversation to have at times.
Yeah, you really have to do the math beforehand.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I think it's intimidating to a lot of people, because as soon as they start looking into it and doing their own investigating, they're like, oh, wait a minute, I have to look on the back of all my appliances. I got to do the calculators and stuff. And yeah, that's true. But there's a lot of resources out there. I think you have a calculator on yours, right?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I have a calculator on mine that makes this process a lot easier. So to give you an understanding of like what your consumption is, and then I can get back with you and let you know what you're going to need. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned that, but that's shopoffgrid.com, right? Is there the shopoffgrid.com/calculator? What is that?
There's a link to it right there on the homepage.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that makes things a lot, and like it's a lot about rounding up and down, and there's this other thing like if my microwave is 1500 watts, but I only use it for 20 seconds. How do you do this, that, or the other thing? It's a lot about rounding things up down to whatever you're going to use it, And
it's always best and whenever you're dealing with off-grid solar, always round up, never round down.
Yeah.
Because you always, you always want more than less when we're talking about power supply.
Yeah.
When we're talking about battery, the size of your battery. It's always best to round up on them.
Right. And when you get into it, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of backup systems that assume that rounding up has happened. Like the charge controller is made to say, all right, you're charging too much, I'm going to increase this or decrease that. Or if the batteries get too low, we're going to shut off the output and whatnot. If you tie in your your inverter and everything like that, like you should. It should be pretty, I won't say plug and play. It's like one step away from plug and play, but basically after you step back from it, you're like, yeah, that's common sense because you need to have this before that. And finally it gets to the component. So, but, and there's a lot of changing trends, especially with the new like van life, bus life hashtag. How has that affected your business for specifically people that are doing stuff like mine? And
I've gotten a lot of inquiries. A lot of submissions on the Offgrid estimator. That's where people that are, you know, in the van life movement and the tiny home movement, that's where a lot of them come through or come in. And yeah, I mean, I quote out, either I can point to a kit that we have already built or configured. They're on the website, or if it's something that if their consumption is a little more demanding, I can certainly, you know, build and design a larger system for them. So and I would say on average I'm getting 2 to 3 inquiries. I wouldn't say a day, but at least a week.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely seeing a trend.
Yeah.
And I have sold. Yeah, we have sold some systems. So it's something that is certainly trending though. And I plan, you know, moving forward to see a lot more business there.
Yeah, and I honestly I like that. I like that the revolution is afoot. You know, I think that people, and you know, I touched on this yesterday. People are just tired as shit of putting up with, like, you know, whoever pointed out the idea that there was a 99%er out there and a 1%er out there. They just nailed it and started this big thing, and people in this new generation are, you know, just, you know, they're seeing what, you know, our generation, we saw what our parents did in the 60s and 70s. We're like, all right, we'll change it from that to, like, you know, now these days you don't have to graduate and immediately be expected to join the military or get married or whatever. There's job satisfaction before having kids and all that stuff. And this next generation is taking it so much further. They're like, screw relationships altogether. There's like lad culture and lass culture, right? Where they just stay single all the time and just hang out with their own friends and not even worried about having kids. And that has translated into, well,
population control.
Well, yeah, totally. And I think the statement was freedom is the new retirement.
Yeah.
And people are just like, no, you know, why would I wait until I'm 65 where there's no guarantee of actually retiring when I can enjoy my life now, when my legs don't hurt and my back doesn't hurt and I can still climb mountains in Indonesia.
Right.
You know, so they're getting out there and doing that. And I think that that's great to see on your level where people are actually going in and ordering, actually getting behind the thought and the discussion a little bit. So talk about like what some of these guys out there would be doing. Like what kinds of smaller, maybe mobile applications do you foresee in the solar future?
A lot of what people are doing is just taking components that are, you know, currently in the catalog and building systems, or having me help them build systems and put them on their toy hauler. I'm seeing actually a lot of that. You know, a lot of people wanting to put solar on their toy hauler or RV to power or to charge their coach batteries. Yeah. That's the thing that I see is trending, you know, alongside the tiny home movement. And you know, other than what we've already like touched on with people that are you know, wanting to get into this movement and that it's trending. I mean, they're using panels. I mean, panels are getting, I'd like to say, I hope the price for solar panels starts to stabilize. The most important thing right now is to get a stabilization in panel pricing, so people know what to expect when they go out and they're looking at solar.
Right.
The panel pricing is fluctuating. One thing that has been nice is like inverters and batteries. The pricing there has stayed the same.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I guess what I'm getting at, Kyle, is just that the panels are probably not going to, you're not going to see a whole lot of like revolutionary things go on or evolutionary things go on with panel development in the next 5-6 years. I think that we're pretty much, as far as the size of the panel, it might start getting a little bit smaller and they might be getting a little bit more efficient. But it's just, what my concern is just making sure that the cost per watt stabilizes and
yeah,
people know
becomes more accessible. Yeah.
It becomes more palatable, more affordable.
So you know that side. What I know, and what I'm assuming a lot of the other van enthusiasts, bus enthusiasts know, is that we look at our power from the other end, from the components that we're planning on using. So like kind of they're saying, oh, what can I do with a 300 watt system? What can I do with a 600, 900, 1200 watt system? And it obviously depends on what components you use, but for most people that are interested in the lifestyle, the first question they have to ask themselves is, how comfortable do you want to be? Like, mine has almost all the amenity, and I'm not trying to, like, I have a very simplistic lifestyle. I do not have a washer and dryer aboard, but I have a microwave. I don't have a big stove, but I have, what do you call it? A toaster oven. I'll cut a pizza in half and I'll just cook, what I mean? Like, it's just me in there. So, like, those are the kind of questions that we ask ourselves. But like you said, there's, what it is, the questions that we don't know the answers to are, is there going to be a change in that? And, I dated a girl who grew up in a house with the first one on the block with solar panels, and those things look exactly the same as the ones that I got from you, a few months ago. So, I can see where you're going with the whole, it's kind of hard to see that the evolution of panels themselves.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I now that I've given that question a little more thought too, is like and I think I touched on this. As panels start becoming more efficient, then they are going to start getting smaller. And one thing that I would like to see happen, and I wish I had more information on this than I could, but I would like to see, because I don't even carry thin film in my catalog, and it's because they're not very efficient. Or my experience in over my almost 10 years in solar is the efficiency levels on thin film hasn't been great. And part of the problem too is whenever you install solar, you want to be sure that you get some ventilation underneath underneath the panels. And a lot of the thin film you see kind of rolls out and lays flat, so you don't get that cooling element coming underneath the panel, which obviously that helps with the efficiencies.
And so I think a lot of people assume that because it's just this flexible material, you could just glue it on, and they don't really think about the fact that you do need that ventilation back there. Yeah.
So I would like to see some strides and if there have been, I'm not aware of them, but I'd like to see some advancement in the thin film technology, particularly when it comes to efficiencies. So that's something that maybe is down the line.
Yeah.
And built-in charge controllers when it comes to off-grid. One thing that with the solar panels or with those portable kits that I offer, it has that built-in charge controller. I think that that is something that I would like to see happening at the manufacturing level more. I mean, this here is what I have is added after the fact, so they don't come off the line this way. So I think that that obviously is for the off-grid space. You don't need that in grid tie, but when it comes to off-grid, it would be. I'd like to see more of that,
right?
More integrated, which just makes the installation easier for the off-grid, for the off-grid installer.
Sure. And what kind of advice would you offer? So I don't know if it would differ from the advice you would offer someone who's doing a residential install, but what advice would you offer for the more nomadic solar enthusiasts? Like, what's the general question you get the most, or what's your, what do you find yourself answering questions about the most that have to do with kind of the nomadic use of the solar and the solar systems?
Well, a lot of times the wiring is different. You're going to wire your panels in sets. So I mean, be prepared. And a lot of the panels now that we sell that just come off the line, not just Shopoffgrid, but everyone, because they come off the line this way. They have the MC4 connectors, and a lot of times you're going to want to get like a branch connector to wire them in parallel to increase your amperage. So that is something that you're going to want to consider when you're looking at off-grid, keeping branch connectors and understanding how that comes together. I actually have some information on the website about branch connectors, and then there are a lot of off-grid installations that are done in parallel in series as well. And just real quick, parallel is positive to positive, negative to negative, and that's why you need a branch connector to allow those two. You need like an adapter to make that connection. But with a series connection, which increases your voltage, you'll be using you won't need that adapter, and you can just plug in male to female from the panel leads.
Right.
But you still be wiring those in sets, and then down into a what's called a combiner box. And so the installation and the wiring a lot of times is different. And again, you can go to my website and find lots of information about how things come together. But just be prepared for the wiring to be a bit different than maybe you've seen in home installations or grid tie installations.
For those just getting into solar, the reason that you would increase the voltage would be to suffice like a higher battery bank requirement, which would be the series, and then the parallel.
Well, yeah, that's a good. Well, voltage actually it increases the power of your system.
Right.
When you're wanting to increase, like you can look at it as you think about it like as a light bulb. Say you have a light bulb, but you really if you want that light bulb just to come on and glow at an adequate level, then you'll be fine wiring like with a 12 volt system. But say you want that light bulb to really glow. Then you bump it up to 24 volts. That turns that just makes that bulb more powerful, or like that makes your saw more powerful, or your drill more powerful. And it makes the blade spin harder the higher your voltage. One reason you'd want to increase your amps because you want more storage. So it's really kind of a balancing act. Like, how powerful do I want my system to be, and how much power do I want to have available to me? And a lot of times those are questions that people need to ask themselves when they're building, or it's not a lot of times, every time. That's a question that people need to ask themselves when they're wanting to get into installing an off-grid system, whether it's something that's going to be powering field equipment or it's going to be powering your tiny home. You just want to, you consider those things. A lot of your smaller installations, it's fine to go 12 volts, especially when we're talking about the like field equipment or powering lights out, powering some LED lights. But when we're talking about powering your tiny home, like the kits that I have, those are 24 volts.
Right. Yeah, I think I stuck with a 12 volt system because I took out a bunch of components in the bus that I wanted to keep. I took out a bunch of fans, and I took out a bunch of like the panel lights on the roof, or the ceiling rather, and like the aisle lights and stuff. I wanted to keep all those, and I wanted to take them off of the battery that starts the bus and runs that, and just kind of if I've got a battery bank anyway, why would I take juice from the normal strain? So I figured I'd throw all that over. Plus, it's easier to turn those things on and off if I centralize all my switches. And that's another big benefit, I think, that you probably don't find in residential, but you do find in the nomadic, the bus van life thing, because, as you walk through a house, you just flip a switch wherever you go into a room. Well, you have one room in a tiny house or a bus, and you want those switches kind of centrally located, and so rewiring, taking the original components and having the availability to kind of flip them on and off in one area. That's something that I've noticed was very big in a lot of the videos that I follow. Some of the other people that are building schoolies, and the sprinters are really big for the off-grid van life thing. So lots of cool benefits there. So have you ever had any horror stories come in? Like,
horror
stories, like
horror stories.
Yeah, anybody fry themselves or like?
No, I haven't had anything. I've had over my career in solar. I know that people at times have made the investment and then decided for whatever reason they didn't want to actually go through with the installation, and that was kind of just from a reverse logistics standpoint, and just from a business standpoint, that was kind of a horror story. But from like people that are actually going out and doing the installation, the only thing that I would say, and I have seen this happen, and it's like the system was not sized correctly, and a lot of times the reason that happens, and I don't like to. I know the ideology, customer's always right, but a lot of times the customers, they don't give you the right information. And if you design a system, you build a system, and you have bad information, it's garbage in, garbage out. Right. So people just need to be sure that they are, when they put the information into, for example, the off-grid calculator, that they
you got to do your homework.
Information, and it's always good to give us a call and ask if you have any questions, like what are you needing here? We're more than happy to tell you exactly what we need if it's not coming easy to you. Because like I said, if we design a system and there was something left out, and you know the system's delivered, and it turns out, oh man, this isn't working for me. The batteries are draining too quickly. And I honestly, Kyle, I know I haven't had. This is something that I've heard of happening. I've never had this happen to me, but I know that this has happened before. And you know, it's like it's a nightmare situation. It's an unfortunate situation, and how those are resolved, you know, really up to the companies involved and the people involved. But that's just one thing that people need to realize, you know, especially if once you install it and it turns out this wasn't sized right, that can turn into a horror story pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, at the very minimum, it turns into an expensive story.
Expensive, exactly. Exactly. You either need to add to your system, or, you know, it may and that's something else, you know, people need to realize. Off-grid solar, or even solar in general, isn't for you. You know, I mean, if your consumption is out of this world, if you're, I've had people call, and this is, you know, people that are using, you know, 800. I actually had a customer up in Canada. I forget the numbers, but they were using, you know, because they have these heat lamps, and they're using this this astronomical amount of power, and they were wanting to go completely off the grid. And once I finally got them quoted on what they're needing, you know, I had to tell them, I was like, I don't think off-grid is for you. I mean, I know you want to go off-grid, but there's a difference between what you want and what you're going to, you know, unless you have Bill Gates money, you're not going to be able to afford this battery bank, right? So
they were growing weed, weren't they? They were trying to
no, it was actually it was a sweet Swedish sugar. This elderly couple but they had a chicken farms, and they wanted to run heat lamps for their chickens.
Gotcha. All right.
And it was just, you know, off-grid solar was not a good fit for them.
Right. Yeah, it's unless
they had like $250,000.
Yeah.
You know, which they didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, if you can just afford to drop that, you know, your problems are not electricity related.
Right.
So anyway, we talked recently about, you know, a cabin somewhere or whatever. You know, with the tiny house revolution underway, like, what would be your ultimate off-grid setup?
I mean, I really, it's as odd as it might sound, I haven't put a lot of thought into this. I would think that you talking tiny home or cabin?
Well, whatever you want, you know. It's your. It's your.
I mean, I think if I had a cabin, I would go with one of the Outback System Edge systems, like the SE 830. That would give me adequate power to run, you know, to run the appliances that you know, like a TV, and to make life comfortable, as long as you're not, you know, leaving lights on and just blasting your radio all day and running fans.
You're not a 24-hour gamer, right?
Yeah, you're not playing Halo, you know, for 2 days straight.
Yeah.
So I think that the System Edge 830 it would be a great fit for my needs. That would give me, you know, enough power to live comfortably out in my cabin. And then when it comes to tiny home, I mean, heck, I would just go with one of my kits that I have, the 1140. That gives you about 85 kilowatt hours a month. And that's if you live in a small apartment. Look at your power bill. It'll say on there what your monthly consumption is. And I'd be willing to bet, if you're good about leaving your lights off, not running the AC all day, you don't leave your TVs on, you're right around 85 kilowatt hours a month. Okay. I had a girlfriend, actually. We looked at her bill, and she was like it was like 50, but she was never home really, but it was like 50 kilowatt hours a month. So if you're really about the minimalist lifestyle, you know, in the tiny home movement, that 85 kilowatt hour kit, 1140 watts should be perfect for you.
Yeah,
it would be perfect for me. If I want to live in a tiny home and really wanted to reduce my consumption, I could live on that system.
Right. Yeah. It's also about I think just leaving a smaller footprint. Every once in a while, I say something like, "Yuppies ruin everything," and I think the tiny house revolution is something that squarely fits underneath that category, because, you know, when tiny houses were first built, it was because people want to use less. It's because they wanted to be eco-friendly. It's because they wanted to, like, and part of that is just spending less. It's not that you're cheap. It's that you just don't want to be such a consuming type of consumer. You know what I mean? Like overconsumption and all these things. And you know, here in Virginia, the government is very, very against it. You know, they'll never come out and say that, but what they've done is they've made the license to build a tiny home ridiculously expensive. It's something in the millions. And so there's only a few people that can afford that. And what they do is they take out a state-based loan. And what that means is that immediately the price of the tiny home starts something like $80,000. And that's where the yuppies ruin everything statement comes in, because like, what is the point of this system if you're back to starting off at spending what houses cost in a rural area? You know what I mean? Like,
I was watching a show on I forget the channel, but it's like tiny home lifestyle or something, and these two young yuppies are wanting to fit into a tiny home. But they're what they were wanting, their accommodations were just ridiculous. And I guess what they're doing, I mean, they're investing in. And when I look at this house, by the time I didn't watch the whole show, a lot of this is speculation, but it looked like when they went in to build this home, I'm like, that when they're done with this, because the builder, you know, said, okay, well, we'll see what we can, we'll see how we can accommodate this and make this happen. And I was like, that house, when they're done with it, I mean, it's like Pimp My Ride for I don't know if you remember that show back in the it's like Pimp My Ride for tiny homes.
Yeah.
It's like by the time they're done with that home, you know, with all these innovations and all this cool stuff, it's gonna be like $80,000 to $100,000. It's like, how's that a minimalist lifestyle when you're living in that sort of home? You know, you can go to Oklahoma, where I'm from. You can buy a house for $20,000.
Yeah, it's not like that in California or in you know, a lot of places.
No, not in California.
Not anymore, anyway.
$100,000 buy you a shack out back.
Yeah.
You know, but in Oklahoma, you know, point being, I mean, I think we're making the same point. I agree. It's like a lot of the tiny home movement is about a minimalist lifestyle and not having a lot of elaborate, you know, things. It's just you have the necessities, and I think that's great. You know, you're living the Ted Kaczynski lifestyle in the woods, minus the mail bombs.
Yeah.
You know, but and I think that there's a lot to be said for that. You know, I think that if you want to live in a tiny home, it doesn't need to have Pimp My Ride qualities.
Yeah, it's not a thing that it started out being anyway. This minimalist thing. Today, I think it's also about personalizing it for yourself, because I need very little storage. I don't know if you know, you've done a little bit of investigating on you know, a couple of my documentaries and things, but basically put, if you imagine what my lifestyle is when I travel, I have 2 crates of stuff that have gear, like, you know, photo gear, video gear, tripods, lights, etc., all the stuff that I carry with me, and 1 bag of clothes, and that's it. That's what I do. And I'll go to a place, a region of the world, and I'll film there for 6 months to a couple of years maybe, and then I'll move to another place. So for me, that's living in 2 boxes in a bag. My apartment doesn't need to be big. Nothing needs to be big. I'm here back in the States now, and I've got this tiny home being built. So the only storage I need is just for my gear. The rest of it is just, you know, filler. And it's great because I can personalize that for me, you know.
And I do want to say, though, you know, being a little overly, I mean, I do appreciate, though, and like this was a young couple, the want or the effort at least to try to minimize your carbon footprint and live in a tiny home. It can be even if it's decked out and it doesn't necessarily fit the minimalist lifestyle or movement.
Right.
But hey, look, at the end of the day, you're reducing your carbon footprint. And that is something that is commendable, and I certainly appreciate. So there's different approaches to it. I think optimally, in my opinion, it's, you know, to keep it as simple as possible. But hey, you know, it's there's different ways to go about it.
Right.
To each his own.
Yeah. So last question. I might actually find myself in Cali pretty soon. Where would you recommend I go and I see, you know, things driving Linus, the land yacht?
Where, you gonna be in Northern California or Southern California?
I'm open to suggestions.
Well, I would check out Big Sur. I mean, Big Sur is pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, you know, we're talking about north. We're talking up north.
Yeah.
I love both the north and south areas of the state. Down here, I would go to. I live not far from Carlsbad State Park, and there's a really nice RV park there that I would recommend checking out.
All right.
So that's a couple suggestions. Just cruising the coast, man, and finding places to stop along the way.
Oh yeah, I've heard wonderful stories about the coastal highway. Yeah.
So that's my suggestion.
All right.
I'll email you. I'll do a little more research for you, and I'll shoot you some suggestions.
Well, originally when we connected, I was going to end up in Burning Man. That was the big thing. I was like, finally going to get out there to Burning Man. I applied. I got a media pass, and then my mom got stuck with another surgery, so that burned that man right down. So I'm not gonna do that, but I'll definitely be out there. I mean, we'll have
to connect when you get out here. Let me know when you're out here.
Oh yeah, I'll take you for a spin. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, I mean, one of the coolest, one of the goals that I have for the bus, especially with regard to being off grid and solar power and all that stuff, is to sustain myself through the Southwest. These places that I've always wanted to photograph. My dad's brothers grew up all over my dad actually is from Guyman, and his brothers and stuff grew up.
From Guyman?
Yeah, out on the Panhandle.
Really?
Yeah. And so they grew up in Arizona and New Mexico, Colorado, and so they kind of stayed around that area. But
I used to drive through Guyman on my way to Colorado.
Yeah.
We'd go do back in the 80s when we'd go on our summer vacation.
Nice.
We'd cruise through Guyman.
Not a whole lot there.
No.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times. It's nice and flat. A whole bunch of prairie dogs.
Yeah.
So, but all these great stories about just the wilderness, the amazing skyline. Like that's my goal for Linus. I want to be able to see that stuff, and I want to be able to do it sustainably, and I'll end up in California. So
nice.
Torrey
Pines. That's where I don't know. Torrey Pines is somewhere I would recommend you taking that van to.
All right.
That's somewhere down here. That's somewhere down here in the Southern California, San Diego area.
Right.
Check that out.
All right. I will.
I have a volcano. I found this park. It's crazy what you find out here in Southern California. I mean, there's parks right in your backyard. I did a Google search just looking for something for me and Macy to go out and do. Macy's my little chihuahua to go out and do. And I found Calavera Park. And I'm like, let me look at this. Found it online. There's a volcano over. This place is like within a 5-mile radius of my house. Didn't even know it was there. It's a volcano. It's crazy some of the things that you just kind of stumble across in this area of the world, man. So
well, it is like right there on the Ring of Fire. Aren't they saying that Frisco's going to end up in the Bay pretty soon anyway?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. No, I don't think this volcano is going to blaze. It's decommissioned isn't the right word, but it's not going to blow anytime soon. It's inactive.
Yeah, they took it off the payroll.
They took it off. Yeah, exactly. They unplugged it.
Well, listen, Daniel, I really appreciate you talking today. Be sure to go visit shopoffgrid.com.
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 All your off-grid solar needs and grid tie. A lot of the equipment that we sell can be used in grid tie applications too, especially the panels. We have some grid tie inverters, but our focus really is on the off-grid customer. Give us a call if you have any questions. That estimator has been getting a lot of use. I'd like to see even more use. So please, or you can request a quote. There's all sorts of ways that you can hit us up, and we're more than happy to help.
Yep. The phone number is 888-938-3242. Right?
That's right. Extension 1 for sales. Extension 2 for customer service.
Yep.
Extension 0 is our operator. That's Macy. She'd pick up the phone, but she doesn't have any thumbs.
So she just watches it. She sniffs at it.
She just watches it.
You can actually see Macy, the mascot, on his YouTube channel. I think it's Shop Off Grid Videos. I'm going to throw you under the bus here a little bit, and I'm gonna force you to do a couple more tutorials because your shit, So throw up a camera.
No, I know. I need to get out and do it. I don't have a lot of I don't have production equipment that makes it easy. And editing video is a pain in the ass. I hate it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Brutal. I hate it. I'm not very,
That's why we're doing an audio podcast, my friend.
Yeah. So So I don't have it takes a lot of patience to do the video editing, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's not a good reason. It's kind of a lame reason that I haven't shot a lot of video.
Well, I'll be out there. I'll give you
need to do more.
I'll give you
I
a
actually
quick
have some
rundown.
videos still in my phone, Kyle, that I could probably just break out and edit.
You know, it's just about content. You know what I mean? Like it's these days. There's so many videos on YouTube that people, I'm not going to say they're expecting less quality, but it's a lot about content these days. So you just knowing your shit is going to go a long way. Just have a nice steady shot. I'll get out there. I'll give you a video 101 when I get out there.
Nice.
But yeah, just it's about continually bringing content, and that's what's going to drive a lot of traffic your way. So you could also reach Daniel at daniel@shopoffgrid.com, or you can go to Facebook and search Shopoffgrid.com, and that'll bring you to his Facebook page. Have I missed anything there, Daniel?
No, that's it.
All right.
I think we're good.
All right, Daniel, thanks so much. So much again. It's been a real pleasure working with you. I'm hoping to keep contact with you as this thing progresses. And yeah, we're face buds too. And he's going to be keeping in touch with me while I release all these wacky videos of digging up underneath my bus and doing all kinds of crazy shit. So, all right, Daniel, thanks a bunch. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Okay.